This is America's Man's Man. I'd like to call to mind a Chinese proverb. This is a communist country. This is one of their proverbs. That if you wait long enough, if you're patient enough, you will see the bodies of your enemies floating by in the river. And as all of the conservative pundits, the wisest conservative pundits, seem to be calling out these days, China is a formidable enemy. And for China, the quest for economic domination is a multi-generational one. It is that of a country which has been around longer than the United States. And so maybe they, to their credit, are valuing context a little more than us Americans with our poisonous Hollywood media. And may I suggest to you that we're poisoning nobody else in the world as much as we are poisoning our own populace here in America with it. And to China's credit, its elected officials are largely successful due to the level of control they maintain over media in China in protecting the Chinese from our poisonous, toxic Hollywood fake news infotainment establishment. Now, that establishment is crumbling, or would be, but the fake news, the FANG companies, Silicon Valley is actually in cohorts with the fake news and the infotainment industry because they realize that they are united by a common purpose: to exploit the American people by use of electronic propaganda. Now, their primary interest in Hollywood and the New York fake news is profit. They profit, again, when Americans are at our most miserable. Why? Because, as C.S. Lewis, the author of the Chronicles of Narnia, wrote in his book Mere Christianity, it is much easier to sell, i.e., all those annoying ads on YouTube. And by the way, don't you dare pay for YouTube Red. I mean, you can, but you're throwing your money away, and you're giving money to a communist organization which is already siphoning lots of money from the federal government already in various ways. Not to mention the for-profit monopolies. Don't give money to Google, and I'm fighting them now because they have a monopoly on the advertising, on the web advertising industry, and so it's very hard to find a competitor. I tried to use a company called Pop Ads, but it turned out to be located in China, and they do some they pull some nasty tricks, and so basically it's a wild west of an internet. So there's a Chinese proverb that if you wait long enough, if you're patient enough, the bodies of your enemy you'll see the bodies of your enemies floating by. So communist China and communist Russia both have been out to get America for a very long time, and the Democrats, who are the party of chaos, the party of evil. I did a video on this already, so you can go to americasmansman.com and check out the Party of Evil episode, where I flesh this out in more detail. Russia and China they're not as obsessed with this whole instant gratification thing, which led Kurt Cobain to commit suicide, and which is leading a lot of Americans, sadly, to also seek desperation, to buy into a gospel of desperation. May I recommend, if you feel, if you kneel, there's an outcrop of motivational speakers, and it's become a cottage industry, the training of motivational speakers. Most of them aren't very good because they they play by the rules of the fake news. So they've established there's a cottage industry of you have your Tony Robbinses, and a lot of other names it's not worth mentioning, and that it's become a new charlatan industry of people who basically get you all excited but aren't able to share real success, backbone, or real wisdom, because they safely avoid the heart of American enterprise, of capitalism, of patriotism, and that is simply that this country is founded upon the Bible. In that way, I want to recommend a few resources to you. If you want to seek more healthy, kind of motivational types of recordings. Two specifically, if you'd like to be more like Donald Trump, one of Donald Trump's family pastors was Dr. Norman Vincent Peale. And I've only listened to his audiobook, The Power of Positive Thinking, but it is needed now more than ever for people today where we are in our nation. If you'd like to really learn about what motivates Trump and be motivated by the same things that he did, never mind the gurus trying to make a quick dollar about what motivates Trump. Why don't you go to, you remember Barack Obama's pastor was, I can't remember the hack communist idiot's name, but he's like, he preached a sermon which has been an infamous sermon called "God Damn America." This is Barack Obama, our last president, if you consider Barack Obama a president. I don't personally, because I believe, I know he was a communist infiltrator in the White House, and I do believe that Acorn really messed. I mean, there's an election that should have been investigated more fully, but it's neither here nor there. We're undoing the damage that Barack Obama has caused, one day at a time. Every single day, Barack Obama did something else to undermine America, and it was a frustrating time for real patriots. But we maintained our faith in Jesus Christ and the Constitution, and the collective wisdom of the American populace prevailed, despite the fake news influences, despite the fact that they have more propaganda tools than we do, and they're very much more effective at coming up with gossip and lies than conservatives, because we don't stoop to that level. However, there's a danger, and the danger is ignorance, and it's a sickness especially here in the hub of the universe, which I'm driving through just north of the hub of the universe, Massachusetts. Communism is a sickness. It inflicts not only Massachusetts but most of New England, and I think at this point it stretches. Thanks to media and the speed at which leftists, communists can use the media, and Google is very complicit in helping them do so, to spread lies and effectively demoralize an entire nation. That's what the communist media has done. Again, this unholy alliance of Silicon Valley and the fake news. And I come up against it every day. I meet people every day. Especially, I do believe that New England is the heart of it, for a number of reasons I'm not gonna get into here. I've discussed in previous episodes, but the truth of the matter is, years of indoctrination rather than education. There was a time when youngsters grew up reading. And today, reading has been replaced with coding. So our marvelous, wonderful English language, unlike any other in the country, unlike any other in the world, full of nuances. I was reminding someone today that the language of illegals, Spanish, requires about 1.5 times, maybe not that much, but it requires at least 1.25 times as many words as it does. It requires about 25% more words at the very least to explain what someone could just as easily describe in English. Because English is so fluid, it is so poetic, and it contains so much potential. And coincidentally, because it is a nation's language which conveys values, we are perhaps the most agile-minded people. And I know the phrase open-minded has been corrupted to include even those things which are intentionally harmful to the human spirit. And that's not what virtuous people have used it for. I remember I had a teacher, and one of my communist teachers, one of my many communist Massachusetts teachers. I'm not going to name her because this is not specifically communist, but it's a symptom. On September 11th, so-called postmodernism is it's a literary and historical, parahistorical, and an artistic term, which is used to impose a defeatist worldview upon all art after September 11th. It's an attempt to redefine all art, history, and science after September 11th in such a light that America has been defeated, when nothing could be farther from the truth. We are the most resilient, we are the most blessed. Hell, we are a race of good people, of ingenious people, of resilient people. It's in our American DNA. It's in Christianity, the foundational idea which makes America tick. And this product of Marxism, which all the leftists, again, these willfully evil communist thinkers are using in an attempt to demonize this great American people, which has always been great. And is realizing that greatness more and more with the help of our good Godward President Donald J. Trump. This whole idea of postmodernism is an attempt to. There are two main components of it. First of all, it's always depressing and demoralizing. Okay, so it's always it's a false assumption. It's a false assumption that, again, willfully anti-American people, many of them within our own borders. We're talking academics. We're talking about art critics. We're talking about the people at the Communist New York Times. Again, trying to scare people to sell papers. It's an imposition. It is a fake news editorializing in the worst possible light of the land of the free and the home of the brave, the nation everybody else wants to come into, that we are blessed to live in and continue sharing the light of America with the world, the city upon a hill. The city upon a hill. And if you can imagine this, Americans on our own soil, they spend their whole careers, they preaching sermons of Satan. And there's this vague, not so vague, they've codified it into art theory and whatnot. And I've seen it even in so-called Christian colleges. And it's this fake idea, it's this imposition, this communist propaganda that somehow, it's post 9/11. We're now postmodern. 9/11. It's as if someone in your life whom is very dear to you died, and you've decided, I'm going to roll over and die because this person died. It's like the worst possible way you could grieve. It is the communist attempt to use a very, a bad day in American history one of the most tragic days in American history, and again, taking an unhealthy generation, many of whom has divorced parents who can never really cope with the idea of their parents hating each other, which also is a product of communism, because it was part of the communist platform to deconstruct marriages, because in the communist world, this is all out in the open. It doesn't take very far for you to research this and verify that it's true. God knows, the fake news anchors know all this. But in the communist world, marriage and God I talked in the last video about atheistic communism and why that is the enemy today. And now the fake news has tried to discredit very successfully atheistic communism, but that adjective is very important because if America is faithful to Jesus Christ, the God of America, then it cannot be loyal to the bureaucratic communist state that they're trying to establish. In other words, if each of us individuals follow our God, then, and in doing so are faithful to our wives, our children, our families, our friends, our all the things that God designed us naturally to do. You want to take care, like Jesus says, what father would give his child a stone? But the communists are becoming effective by destroying families, at doing just that, by turning fathers and mothers into people who have hearts of stone just because they can't get over themselves. It really is millennials really are the all about you generation. I think Generation Y, for that reason, was much more descriptive. But millennials wanted to we're going to rebrand ourselves, and and of course, because it's all about me, is the way millennials think. Me millennials, Generation Y, all about you, all about you. I can't say enough, mothers and fathers, new mothers and fathers who listen to rap music. Do you understand how deprived of value rap music is? Do you understand what it says about your brain that you listen to rap music? It's not music, first of all. But do you understand? Do you understand that you're literally listening to thudding, and there's no art, there's no musical value to it, and there's no real poetry, and that there's no effort, and that most rap beats, I gotta get a beat going, was composed and performed by a computer? I mean, that's not talent. That's not music. Heck, I listen to the Boston Pops these days, and Keith Lockhart, he's got nothing compared to John Williams or Arthur Fiedler, and John Williams is he's kind of a hippie himself. He grew up in that whole he's got the communist thing going. So we have multiple generations of cultural erosion. It started with jazz may have been a legitimate musical form. Because I guess at jazz's best, it was a form of fusion. And I'm a little bit biased, so I'm a millennial, so maybe it's just my bias giving jazz too much credit. But I think that jazz had something. I think jazz, like Rhapsody in Blue, it's a cohesive piece. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. There's an orchestra of human beings, of the nuance of the human character that rings true in the score. And you have a whole orchestra coordinated. It's a team effort to create an orchestral symphonic jazz piece. Fusing jazz and is it? What can you name the piece of music that the theme to Judge Judy is based upon? That's bad. I hate to give her airtime because she's getting behind that sycophantic idiot Bloomberg. or is he manipulative? I mean, at the end of the day, even if I don't think there is such thing as a manipulative genius, because if you're really genius, if you're really wise, you're going to side with America. You're going to take the godly side, because the Bible informs us that fear of the Lord is the beginning of all wisdom. So if you're evil, you can't be too brilliant. The evil genius, for that reason, is a paradox, because if you're evil, you're going to win. You're going to lose eventually. So it's short-sighted. There's a lot of short-sighted people in America. And China and Russia have been waiting for generations, for the bodies of American soldiers and citizens to pass by in the stream, as it were. So they're in it for the long haul, and they're not as obsessed with instant gratification. So they're allowing us to poison ourselves with our own media. Again, the quality of our music has declined. Millennials don't read anymore. We code instead. So we're thinking in numbers instead of literature. And so there's no nuance. It's like the freaking Japanese language. Every word means one thing. In German, I would imagine the same thing is true. I don't speak German fluently, but again, I would wager if I did speak if I were acquainted with German better, and I wish I were, frankly. I would wager that the words don't. Well, German is a very difficult language to learn as well. But I would imagine that German is probably one of those languages where it has that very consonant, very kind of jagged. It doesn't flow off the tongue like, say, French does. So it's consonant intensive. And it affects the way you think, because the language that we speak carries values with it, which is why English is so important, and which is why the evil FANG companies and the fake news have this in common too, is that they get you to think in videos and visuals, and that's not really thinking at all, because it involves no effort, it involves no proactive thought. It's a very passive process, and if you're coding, you're not really meditating. You can't reflect in the silence of your heart in numbers. You just can't do it. You can't meditate upon the meaning of human existence in long division. It just doesn't work. In C++, it just doesn't add up, if you will. Even that phrase, add up, is a metaphor for another abstract concept, which, though numbers are abstract in a certain way, they can never be as abstract as the English language. And when you replace laughing out loud with LOL, the whole meaning is truncated, just as the fake news truncates hours of human passion and suffering and joy into 30 seconds, and you lose something. The same way Billy Graham truncated the Bible into John 3:16, and suddenly the whole meaning of the Bible was warped almost beyond recognition. And suddenly, we weren't. The mission of the church, the Great Commission, was no longer to go out into all nations, baptizing in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, but rather that God loves everybody. Jesus is a hippie, so let's all get laid and listen to Christian rock, is really what they're banging into your head at the local church today. And I say church because that is no church at all. If your church, and again, I've thought long and hard about this, I've heard all the counter arguments, take it on faith. If you're not listening, I want you to do something for America's Man's Band. Can you do this for me? Millennials, can you do this for me? I want you to listen to at least one piece of classical music a day. It's strange. I know it's strange, and it's annoying to you at first. It wouldn't be if you were better accustomed to it, but you have to acquire the taste for it. It's beyond you right now. See, rap music isn't I call it rap music. I mean, I don't really mean music, but we're giving it the benefit of the doubt because I know most of you allow yourselves to be ear raped by it every day. I do mean ear raped. Seriously, I was listening to a piece earlier because I was being forced to, and I do mean forced. And it was like just every obscenity in a row. That's not art. It takes no creative to use obscenity and profanity. I could right now, I could break out the N-word, and if be like, oh, did you hear what America's man's man just said? And it's cheap. It's really cheap, okay? And, if that's the only way you can express yourself, I am sorry for you. But it doesn't enlighten the human spirit. And that's why I don't like using profanity in these videos, because I know that, again, I'm not above the influence of it, the same way none of us are above the influence of fake news. If I use enough profanity, eventually those terms are going to make their way into my subconscious or whatever, my soul, and I don't want to tarnish my soul by allowing that filth into it. I just won't. And all of America needs to guard our hearts. It's not a matter of being sheltered or whatnot. That's not the right way to think about it. The right way to think about it is that evil needs to be guarded against, and we need to guard our hearts against evil. We have not been good at guarding our hearts against evil, and that's how communism, in the form of the infotainment media, has bored its way. Like an animal bores through logs. I mean, that kind of bore. It's bored its way into into our hearts and minds, such that rather than meditate on the verses of the Bible, the communist influenced media has gotten us, by way of advertising, to meditate on the mysteries and virtues of slogans such as "Here we go," as in Budweiser, which I always thought was a really sinisterly ironic commercial, because I know people who have died and lost. I had a friend, one of the ingenious communists that a family friend, and their son fell off a chair from drinking too much alcohol and broke his arm. And so you hear a slogan like Budweiser. I remember being in middle school, government school indoctrination, wonderful Linfield school system, the communist Linfield school system, and these idiot neighbors laughing about a commercial for Budweiser, and it had frogs in it. And there's one of them would say Budweiser, the other two each would say a syllable, the frogs. And they just this stupid gimmickry, and it's just so. We're getting dumber, okay? We're getting dumber, and this is objective. This is not subjective. We're getting dumber. Our vocabularies is one of the primary indicators of intelligence. I know what the scientists are gonna say. I know what Google, not even the real scientists, but I know what Google is gonna say about this. But our intelligence is dropping. We are retarded, moronic imbeciles compared to the children who grew up in the 50s. My grandfather, who graduated from high school, I don't even know if he graduated from high school, but he was smarter